Well, David G, is it nice finally after, we've been away for so long to start coming back to these countries like Brazil, a former hub of MMA? How nice is it to finally be back here?
I mean, first off, it's fantastic. I think you guys will remember that in March 2020 when the world was shutting down, Brasilia was our last location that we were able to hold an event at prior to completely shutting down for a few months. So to come back here and be able to deliver a card like this for the Brazilian fan base is hugely special. And then the impact that, MMA has in Brazil is profound. It's unlike so many other countries around the world. And so we've seen it in, the social media content that's been distributed, some of the initial ratings that we saw on Bungie TV last weekend. This country, more so than so many countries around the world, is ready for a return of live events.
Would you agree with me that these places that got deprived of live events and deprived specifically of the UFC, when you come back, you actually see an explosion of more popularity than ever?
Yeah, I would agree with that, absolutely. This will definitely be one of the biggest cards we've ever had in Rio, which we're excited about. We're also in a new chapter here, right? Like we've done the switch over. The expiration of our former broadcast agreements are now done. We've launched UFC Fight Pass here in Brazil with a truly localized product that we believe will provide tremendous value to a Brazil fan base. So it is a new era for us. I think we're excited about it. If you think about the fundamentals of the business here with over 100 Brazilian athletes, we've got 31 or 32 ranked athletes, if you include Andrade and Amanda, who fall into two categories. We've got something like, I think we have 17 Brazilian fighters on this card with 15 fights. So this return is going to be impactful, and it's been a long time. So from a brand perspective, it's important to be back in the market for our fans.
You mentioned launching the Fight Pass thing, and we were speaking to people here about the value it does provide the local consumer. How exciting is that on a personal level to really just be like, hey, here's a new project. We've got to start this, we've got to build this. How exciting is that for you, and how do you think you're doing so far?
So it's been a long time coming. We've been working on this business plan for a while, and we wanted to think of every single component of the offering that made sense for the customer. This is truly customer first. It starts with the pricing, right? If you wanted to buy a UFC, prior to 2023, it was pretty expensive. You wanted to access it was tough to access. You want a truly localized product, Portuguese, not only live events, original programming, all the customer service and the payment options, all these things are done in the spirit of having the best product for a Brazilian audience, which, let's make no mistake about it, deserves the best quality in the UFC world.
Looking at the card itself, how excited are you? We've had great events in France, great events in London where the crowds have been raucous. Brazil obviously has a history of having pretty crazy crowds. What do you think are we expecting on Saturday? Are you expecting the chants, the energy? What are we expecting?
If there's one thing that we know about Brazilian fans is that they understand every single thing that happens over the course of a fight. And so with 15 fights, 2 championships, we've got 11 ranked fighters. We've got an idol like Shogun that probably is swan song. I'm not sure how much he's talked about that this week. We've got former champs like Andrade. We've got the Contender Series grads with the Bonfim brothers. So all of a sudden you've got this great composition of a card that makes so much sense for a local audience. They're going to love it.
You mentioned Shogun. Is the UFC doing anything for him in this broadcast? And putting any sort of like a graphic together for him? Or is it just you're going to let the night play out and just let the emotions and the fans do all the work?
I think the way that Dana and the matchmakers, usually want to have it work is like, let's leave this for the athletes. So listen, I'm not on the inside with what his plans are. There may be something, there may not. I think whatever does happen, I think it's always left to the fighter to figure out what that message is going to be.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier that there might be some new wrinkles for this particular broadcast. Is there anything big, high-level stuff that you can sort of key us into that might be new for this particular broadcast?
Well, other than us producing, like UFC producing the live show, which we always had in conjunction with our old broadcaster, Globo, the delivery of the Portuguese feed for UFC Fight Pass is something that we've got our hands all over. We've got full control over, which is really, really nice. I think the general transition post-COVID is, you look at our show pre-COVID and post-COVID, and we're just doing a lot more, right? There's a lot more people on the ground. There's a lot more cameras. There's a lot more, highlight packages and different, swipes that are being run. There's a lot more social media presence, and we've got probably double the team that's on the ground here that's delivering content for platforms that we hardly embraced pre-COVID that are now in existence. If you look at the broadcast specifically and see what Borsari's done with that Cinecam shot when athletes are walking outside of the octagon, you get this truly high-res moment with athletes immediately following their competition, and there's sweat and there's blood and there's emotion. I mean, the capturing the investment that we've made around the technology of the production, I think far exceeds what we used to do in the past. And I think that's something that we're very proud of to bring the Brazilian audience today.
That's awesome. One of the things we've seen in the States with the Fight Pass is these other promotions that start popping up, new products, new things. Is the same sort of thing going to happen down here in Brazil? Is the Brazil market going to be looking for other fight promotions and things in this area to help augment the library that's going to be taking place?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think what we're offering right now is 28 different, we call them live event partners. And they're partners in the sense of we've got a direct relationship with them. They're obviously, if we've got this partnership, there's a way for the matchmakers to have this ongoing conversation with people that we know and we trust. It helps to build the sport of MMA because we can't be here every night, right? We've got 42 events. We want to be everywhere around the world. If we can only be in Brazil 3 times a year, it's some of these local MMA promotions that keep the spirit, keep the sport alive. And look at what Ed Suarez has done with LFA. And he was showing me pictures this week of a fight that he had in Recife in the fall, and I think there were 7,000 or 8,000 people. Like it was like made a real impact. So for us, it's hugely important from a content delivery standpoint for our fans. It's hugely important from like a scouting and matchmaking perspective, and it makes a really big impact when it comes to what we can deliver from a content perspective. We will continue to look for more local promotions. I mean, if there's one country to do it, it's Brazil, where there's such a massive proliferation of talent here. And it serves us well, it serves the MMA ecosystem well for us to continue to build out this structure.
Last thing for me, this one was Brazil. Are there other markets, other countries that you guys are looking to start a UFC somewhere else? UFC Germany, Fight Pass Germany. I mean, are there other markets that you guys are looking to get into next?
It's a really good question. So, Fight Pass in a purely localized way exists in a variety of different places now. Fully localized in Japan, fully localized in Russia. We've got French version, we've got Spanish version. And so for us, the main differentiator here is we've got all of our content on UFC Fight Pass Brazil, all 42 events. There's nothing that doesn't exist on UFC Fight Pass Brazil that would exist somewhere else. So if you're a fan and you want to see all of the live events, you want to see original programming, you want to see these live event partners that we've got, it all exists on Fight Pass. And for this weekend, UFC 283, this is the kickoff for Fight Pass in Brazil.
Did you ever see that sort of style, that everything on Fight Pass coming to other countries like the US, or do you think the financials don't really work for that sort of region?
Okay, so this is a really important question. It's a really deep question and complicated one. It all depends on different circumstances that are happening in the market. What type of commitment broadcasters are making? How developed is the content market? Do people actually want to embrace streaming as their primary source for the content delivery? In Brazil, our analysis showed it absolutely is a possibility for us. You look at the success of Amazon and Netflix and a variety of other sports-focused streaming services. They've all done really well. The proliferation of smartphones here was a huge component of it. We believe this is going to be really successful in Brazil for all the reasons I mentioned before. In other countries, it could, but I always think there's going to be a real balance between what you need to receive in like a sport building concept from a broadcast or other digital or other content partner, right? Like Brazil is a very mature market. We still believe there's a long way to go in terms of the growth, but I don't think we would go direct to consumer in a place where the sport's still in its infancy, and you need a partner in the market that can speak to a community day in and day out, produce really, powerful, localized content, telling those stories to help build the audience before you get to kind of the confidence level that you want to go direct to consumer. I mean, listen, in the US, ESPN has essentially done that, right? ESPN Plus has delivered virtually everything we do via their streaming service, and it's been successful. So we're continuing to look at other markets to employ the strategy.
Are we going back to Canada this year?
I hope so.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're waiting. Listen, we're waiting to see how a few of these first pay-per-views, how they materialize in 2023. If you follow the Canadian market, we don't want to go in March or April or even May, especially if the Canadian teams are going deep in the NHL playoffs. It makes much more sense to go afterwards. So I think as you're seeing some of the dates and the locations come to fruition for the first, let's say Q1 and maybe half of Q2, then we're going to try to slot in other dates around the world.
Thank you, mate.